Thank you. More final stage of development on the project where we can move forward. So we wanted to submit an application, but this has all been happening very quickly and evolving. Normally we'd come to you with a grant application request like this much in advance, but this time we had to apply very fast so that we could write the grant. So what we have done is we've talked to DOLA and said contingent upon the approval of city council, could we submit an application to the program? Because that way it's kind of moving through their system. So if city council were to approve the LOMA application, we could move that through tomorrow and maybe here as fast as Wednesday. If you guys decide not to, it's the same. We've written an application that can go either way with the LOMA or without the LOMA. So it's just a matter of what you guys think is the best approach for the grant application. And if you guys have any questions about the raise or the opportunity with the LOMA or any of it, I can answer them.
Well, it sure seems like the LOMA is the way to go. I mean, that's great that that even exists.
I think it's a really good opportunity for us right now too, because there's just not many communities looking to take advantage of it at this exact moment.
You said something earlier, and I don't want to expound too much on it, but you said that we were especially impacted by the I-70 corridor going in, and it wasn't recognized by what?
The National Environmental Protection Act.
Okay, so I would say like Idaho Springs, probably Dumont, Lawson, Downey, and Georgetown were all impacted as well. Yeah. Were there other towns that were as impacted?
Well, Clear Creek County was the one that stands out the most and is really held up. Some of the stuff in West Denver as well. But when you look at I-70, what happened after NEPA, you get Glenwood Canyon.
Yeah.
When you look before, you get Idaho Springs, which is like tear out a third of the town, create this really hard barrier with little.
So hardship is what we're going for a little bit there. Okay.
There's a lot of health impacts too that have been studied and correlated to the highway.
Of course.
So that's what a lot of our application is about. You know, we know that there's correlated respiratory illness and cancer rates to people living within 600 feet of the roadway.
Right.
And so mitigating some of those impacts is going to be really important. And that's one of the really great things about this mobility hub project is it's going to remove single occupancy vehicles from the roadway because CDOT will be able to run Mustang and Project Pegasus maybe as frequently as half hour between Vail and Denver, which will mean people can actually use it to commute to Idaho Springs or from Idaho Springs. So we should see some really good outcomes. And then like we were just talking about with electric vehicle charging, we'll have that increased capacity, which will help, make sure the air quality is cleaner. And then that also the parking structure is going to be masked in such a way, it's going to create a sound barrier essentially, which is probably going to lower the decibels downtown by like 6, which is a pretty significant amount. So there's some really tangible benefits to residents in the city. Right. Plus the infrastructure improvements will make to direct people away from residential neighborhoods and towards commercial parking and things like that. So that it's a little easier for them to navigate where they're trying to go and not get up on Wall Street with a camper or something.
The people from last weekend would be very appreciative of that.
But that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to build a project that's good for residents and just builds the capacity to manage what we see happening here and what what the highway brings.
These are two separate grant issues. And the LOMA's not due till next week or something.
The LOMA is due like 3 days ago. And that was the problem is it's a rolling application and we didn't know about it in time to talk to council before. So that's why we turned it in contingent upon approval.
Okay. And then the other one's due tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's in the final form.
That's a 2.4 million.
Correct. And that's the planning. So that'll be the planning grant. And next year we propose to submit a raised construction grant. That'll be a big application. That'll be big.
24 million or something.
Because we receive these grants and then the project doesn't go forward for some reason, that's not a problem, right? This is a planning grant.
The planning grant is not. The LOMA grant is contingent upon the planning grant. So if we don't receive the planning grant, we would not get the LOMA. Okay. But if we get the planning grant and then for whatever reason we can't do a capital project, we won't be in any, it'll be completed. That could be like a shovel-ready project we have. We also, there's the reconnecting communities one, there's an opportunity to build a pedestrian bridge across the highway as well at exit 240. And that would be what we would use for that. So there's a lot of pieces that would come together in 2024, 2025 in this project. But that one is kind of like we've treated it separately because it doesn't really fit the narrative of the mobility hub quite as well.
When we did the original estimates of cost, the planning was a big portion of that cost, right?
Yeah. The other thing to remember is that once we enter our IGA with CDOT, we can start spending money that CDOT has committed to the project. So that's kind of the other piece of this is we've been trying to formalize that agreement with CDOT so that we can move into this next phase, which is the real planning and design work. And that's gonna take, with the NEPA review, which is the review they go through to make sure there's no environmental or archaeological impacts from the project. That could take anywhere from 8 to maybe as long as 14 months or so, like in that range. So we would like to get this project underway. So this funding will come like almost exactly when we would enter that IG in theory with CDOT if we're able to get that across the finish line.
Okay, all right, we're moving forward on these?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Many, many,
Scott,
many.
Absolutely.
Art? Oh, John, question?
What line item are we gonna take this out of?
The planning grant? Or what do you mean?
Joey, we have a line item? Where are you getting this money from?
We don't need any money. There's no match required.
I thought you said you're gonna need $480,000.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're actually not required to have match because we're a rural community, but the state has money for local match for these programs, and they basically encouraged us to apply for $480,000 for match. Now, the thing with that is that because there's no match required, it may affect their calculus a little bit, and I'm not 100% sure what that looks like. But either way, we have no city money going to this grant application.
Okay.
It's two separate applications, John. One is the raise application, 2.4 million, and the other is what came to our attention late in the game is we can enhance that application by applying for this other money and get more done. So
Now it's clear.
But it's confusing because on here, on the ask for the meeting, it says to provide matching funds.
Right, yeah.
The LOMA, the words for LOMA it's the IIGA local match fund is what it is. So that's what LOMA means. And so the local match would be coming from the state. And we could clarify that in the motion if that would be better at council.
Sure.
So John, you all right? Okay, Jeremy? All right. Well, is there anything else on your mind or for a work session? Jonathan is not one to toot his own horn, but I have been getting texts from him, emails about parking violations and things that he was taking care of at like 9 and 10 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
So it's pretty obvious to me that the man's been putting in like 60-hour weeks. And Jonathan, is that not correct?
It's been, there's been a busy couple weeks here.
Yeah,
for
sure. Call your
but-
Switch it.
So
say that
anyway,
one.
so a big thank you.
Well, thank you.
Very, very much.
Thank your wife.
Yeah, thank your wife and family as well.
She actually edited the grant for me yesterday.
It's a family affair.
Yeah.
All right.
Taken care of by us.
yes, interstate. Yep.
I've been downtown a lot last week. I haven't seen one. But if they're stored hours in here or not here.
They should be here between 10 and 6. Right. Yeah, they should have at least one ambassador, if not two, depending on how busy it is on the street.
Well, let's take about a 5-minute comfort break and we'll reconvene at our regular meeting, 7 o'clock. Thanks.
How you doing? I'm good. How are you? Good. I'm excited what you're doing here.
I mentioned that.
Yeah.
It's bad and it's dangerous.
It's really glad you're looking at it.
Oh, I looked at it.
You're talking about the one, right? I don't want to read. I don't want to put 6 months later. Oh my gosh.
I saw you early one morning when I was. You should have recognized. Oh, well, 7 is early for me. That's the earliest I get my kid out of school. I'm like, yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, I definitely should keep it normal.
So we're gonna have a. Our recording meeting
Still, I
Okay.
can give them the more.
Next month?
They do, yeah.
Oh, they were due.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah.
They turned it in, but
I'm
if you
sorry.
have them, I
That's
can add
2
them
weeks.
on.
I can give it to you like. first
Yeah, I
thing.
guess it would be 2 weeks, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, last
Could
one was
you have them
canceled.
PDF, like, if you have them,
Yeah.
you can send them to me in PDF. can
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. I didn't shout at you so I could like glare you or anything.
Oh, no. I had it. It has been like
I
one of
know.
those
I know.
months where it's like thing to thing to thing and it's just like jumping around too much to get everything.
Yeah.
right.
Oh, no.
I just think like.
Oh, sorry, I thought, I was like, oh, my.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh,
I
back
just-
in the day, cricket.
yeah, and sit down and pair those two.
Oh, really? So.
So, yeah. Know what I'm doing.
I can't believe they said that.
Make
sure we don't have a more.
Yeah, okay.
So.
I'm good, how are you doing, my friend?
We really, kind of spent the weekend making sure. It's not hard, you know. I mean, it's hard.
So, Jonathan's working on
It
a
is.
project, for
So you're good.
Okay.
No, it is.
Carmen
Hi,
just joined us too, so.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to our February 27th, 2023 council meeting. We will call it at 7 PM. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to start with a roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Jeremy Jones.
Here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Kate Collier. Here. Scott Snell.
Here.
Art Cacavelli.
Here.
Jim Clark. Thank you.
All rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And we have an agenda before us tonight. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda for February 27, 2023.
Thank you, Kate. And a second? And a second, thank you, Jeremy. All in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? Scott, you okay with your Gotti?
Under myself.
Are we? Where's that at?
Sorry, maybe it's,
It's on their staff report, so it's not an action, right?
okay, all right, all right.
Yeah.
It's not an action.
All right, okay, good, just making sure.
Okay.
All right, and we have before us the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from February 13th, 2023.
Thank you, Art. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Kate. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to the bills. Do I have a motion?
I'm going to approve bills through February 27th, 2023.
Thank you, John. And do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Scott. Any discussion on the bills? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Tim Carmen.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
All right, do we have any public comment this evening?
Yes, Mayor, we do.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Just your name and address for record, please. Lisa Manifold, 1002 Colorado Boulevard. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I want to talk to you guys about the traffic that happened a week and a half ago. If I'm sure Chief remembers, we had the accident that happened on the east side of tunnels, and it backed up traffic pretty badly for at least 2 hours. And I live right on the corner of Colorado and 10th. So Virginia is to the north of me, Colorado is to the south. And both the Google and the Waze maps were sending people down Virginia instead of Colorado. You know, Colorado is tough enough, but it's our major artery, so I can accept that. But when the map apps are sending people to our tiny little side streets, you know, Virginia, not usually Wall, High Street, but Wall or Center Alley or the west side of Minor, that's not really, those streets aren't really made for that. They're not wide enough. And in the 15 minutes that I was standing out there, my car almost got hit. My neighbor's lawn got run over. My neighbor, her daughter, and her car almost got hit from somebody that was trying to get around them because they were unloading their car in the street. So my request is that the city work with Google and Waze of maybe not, if Colorado and 70 are backed up, please don't send people up to our little skinny one-lane roads because those really aren't through roads. You know, people were also running the wrong way on Virginia. They were going down Riverside in front of the Argo. You know, those are where a lot of our citizens walk, and this wasn't evening yet. It was getting towards dusk. So there were still people on the roads that live here that were walking their dogs or whatever. It's not safe. And I know I have gone through Google, and I haven't done it with Waze, and I've made edits, but in speaking with staff, I think that's going to take a bigger effort than just citizens asking, you know, for the mapping apps to please not send people on those roads because it's not saving them any time. You know, they still have to make the turn back out onto Colorado or get back out onto 70 somehow. And it's not safe. They're not following the traffic laws. They're endangering our citizens, you know, and it doesn't do anything for the quality of our life. So my request to you, and you'll probably hear me again, is can we please start working on something so we work with the mapping apps? Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much. We hear you.
I know you do.
Yeah, I usually don't editorialize, but I saw that myself.
And it is correct that they are getting directed down these.
That's
roads.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
just
It is.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I saw it myself.
May I come back up for one second? I'm gonna use my, the other reason that I bring this up is because I talked to people who were coming down the line. I said, what brought you down here? Because it was, you know, 7 or 8 blocks
Waze and
down.
Google
It was
Maps.
Waze and
Yeah.
Google, like they were all holding phones or looking at their phones. They wouldn't have come down this normally. So I think that's, we have to go to the apps. Okay, now I'm really done.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Same thing with Little Bear. They'll
It's
come
a
over
valid
Little Bear when they're
yeah.
trying to divert
Oh,
from,
yeah.
and they have no clue what's on middle there.
Requests have been put in for the last 2 years for all of these roads that we're talking about today, including town. And with almost no result from Google especially, for them to actually make changes.
Jeremy, I didn't know that.
There's been an
Thank
ongoing
you.
fight at the county level, especially with is trying to manage it, and the group that chief are involved with, trying to manage traffic when CDOT has backing.
What can we do though? Because I mean, honestly,
I really
it's the
don't know if there's
stupidest
a
thing to
true
put them on any of those
solution to it
roads.
yet, but it's infuriating, and we've talked about, we can shut down town, for example, during these events. But then you start looking at what it costs in manpower and stuff, and that becomes
Right.
problematic in its own right, as we know. So I'm not sure what the solution is. I know there have been a series of requests put in the last 2 years. Carl Shell is very on top of this, trying to get these mapping apps to change the direction. Old Little Bear is a perfect example of that. That's probably the only thing that's changed on 2/3 of them.
I promise, we will have this as a subject item soon. And Jeremy, I want to thank you for that insight. I never had heard that, but that is really good to know.
Chuck, can I just throw one thing on that fire so that you can bring that up? If there's a major emergency in town, or if somebody's having an event and these roads are blocked up, there is absolutely no way for an emergency vehicle to get to those homes. And not just Wall or Virginia, but every road in town. So it's just something else to
Great
consider.
point, absolutely. Yep.
Which is what elaborated, I get too off our track, but that we started down this path, I think, as emergency just about almost 2 years ago.
Mhm.
This exact conversation of how do we manage this? How do we provide service? How do we maintain access within town? And it's still a struggle trying to figure out how, month by month, how we do it. And we think we make headway with CDOT, for example, and other things. And then we have an event that some of the one we're talking about. There's 2 events in the county in the last 2 weeks. It's exactly the same thing. Georgetown has the same problem with the event to the west, right? So we think we're making progress in these meetings and discussions and plans, and these events will continue to occur, and then we have a negative outcome. So I'm not sure there's a single thing that's going to fix it, but it does involve everybody being involved in meetings with CDOT and everybody else to kind of have these discussions and push that forward, and that is our biggest concern, brought up by everybody.
All right. Well, thank you. I am very glad Lisa came to speak with us today, and this is something that we will be working on. Next up, our finance officer is here with us this evening. Lorraine, welcome, and please come on up.
Thank you, Mayor Harmon. It's nice to be here and see everyone in person. I am going to be reviewing the January 2023 financial statements, and you kind of get a twofer with these because they show you where the current ending balances for the previous year for 2022 are. So I'll kind of be pointing that out. But do know that there's a lot of year-end adjustments and moving things to the right places that happens because of you receiving revenues from December and January of 2023, or even February sometimes. So between now and 1 month from today, when the audit starts, we'll be finalizing those movements, accruals, reversals that happened every year end. So these numbers for the 2022 year end are not final yet for audit. And then once they get audited, there's potential that the auditor could find something that would want changed as well. But they give you a good indication of where we are nevertheless. So the first page of the reports shows again all the cash that's in the combined cash accounts of the city, and it's about $10,662,000 as of the end of January. So that's a nice big number. And the bottom half of that page shows which funds own how much of it, and they total up to roughly the same amount. Then we look at page 2, and that's where the general funds assets and liabilities are. And so there's their combined cash of $2,048,000 on the first page. And the fund balance is always for the previous year. So right now, the ending fund balance for 2022 looks like $2,234,000, $2,234,000. And again, that will change as we do the year-end reversals and accruals. Also, you get bills that still come in February and March for work done in the previous year that wouldn't have been posted yet. Page 3 shows your revenues, and the major ones are highlighted in yellow. And property taxes generally do not come in until February, April, and June are the big months for that. Sales taxes, you've gotten about 6.1% so far, and 8% of the year has elapsed, so that's relatively on track. January is often a lower month. Your franchise fees have come in pretty high, since the winter months are pretty high for public service franchise fees. You've got your special revenues down below on the other taxes that are coming in well. And fines are about 6.2% also of what was budgeted, so those are near enough to budget to not be concerned at this point in time. And then the total revenue shown on page 4 is about 7.3% at the end of January of what was budgeted for the whole year. And again, since you get most of your property taxes later in the year, that's a fine percentage to be sitting with at this point in time. The various general fund departments are listed here, and you'll see the actual year-to-date at the end of January in 2021, actual year-to-date at the end of January in 2022, and this month's January's amounts in the next column, and then the year-to-date at the end of January in the next column. That gets compared to the budget to show what percentage of the budget has been expended so far. And so you can see there that most of these line items look like they're similar to past years. And some of them are monthly that don't vary that much. Others, like salted sand on near the bottom of page 5, it just depends on which month you need to buy sand when those types of charges hit. They aren't like salaries that are spread out fairly evenly throughout the year. So looking at each of the departments on the bottom line, they're roughly around the 8% of the year that's elapsed. The department heads are reviewing these, and Andy just sent me a question from the police department about the overtime and what's shown here. So we'll see if that's correct and how the new timekeeping system is putting those overtime dollars in. But we'll be reviewing these, and they're subject to correction at any point that someone would ask us to look into something further. But overall, the police department's at 9.8%, the courts at 9.4%, and some of the January line items will be higher than the rest of the year for things you pay once at the beginning of the year, such as memberships, subscriptions of some kind, insurances, that type of thing. Parks is about 5.8% of the expenses, which is normal to be lower in the winter than a typical month would be if it was the same all year round. And getting to page 12, you see the total fund expenditures are about 9.7%, which is fine for this time of year. I don't see anything of concern there for the budgeting. The Hanson Cemetery Trust hasn't really changed much over the years. There's not much going on there, and just a little bit of interest that it comes in. The ramp fund, which is the Colorado Boulevard money that was kind of advanced when you took over the maintenance of Colorado Boulevard, will gradually be drawn down as that money is used up for maintenance and improvements on Colorado Boulevard. At the end of 2022, on page 15, you'll see the fund balance was $696,000. Going over to page 16, you get some interest on that money, and page 17 shows no expenditures from this fund in January. The improvement fund on page 18 shows a fund balance at the end of 2022 of $5,253,000. Looking up at the top, though, are the assets of this fund that comprise most of that fund balance. And some of those assets we have in hand, the cash, and others are advances from the wastewater fund, which we do not have. The wastewater fund still has those. So of the fund balance, more than $2 million is in receivables or advances due from the wastewater fund. Once this audit is underway and we see where things are ending up, it's conceivable we could make some of those swap backs of the cash that's owed for the smaller amounts, even at the end of 2022. We've talked about it in the budget for 2023 of getting all the smaller ones paid off. And then to contend with the other ones over time in a way that will work for the water and wastewater funds. On this improvement fund, on page 19, you see the taxes. And they're coming in as expected for this time of year. And then you no longer see the parking revenue going in here, although it did come in past years. But now it goes into the parking enterprise fund. And then it looks like in the beginning of 2022, it came in here, so it shows what was there in January. But during 2022, we changed that and started sending it all over to the parking enterprise fund. Page 20 shows a lot of items in the budget column that are budgeted for money from this improvement fund. And you probably have items in addition that you're interested in that could be funded in the future. And this year's budget shows $5,789,500 worth of projects to be paid for from this fund. A lot of it will be from money coming in during the year, but that's 3.7 million that's budgeted in revenues coming in. So the rest would have to come from fund balances. And in order for those to be paid from cash, some of those advances need to be replenished, eliminated. So the total expenditures through January were slimmer as expected for these types of capital improvements. And they totaled $53,983. Conservation Trust Fund had a $93,811 fund balance at the end of 2022. That's on page 21. And no activity is budgeted for this. You've determined to let these funds, which come from this state lotteries shared monies, build up and use them for projects rather than using them for maintenance and repair during years. Page 24, you show the fund balance for the 1% street sales tax fund at $1,672,000 starting this year. That's on page 24. And then you have revenues budgeted on page 25 of $979,000, and about 7% of those sales taxes have come in January, and you've earned some interest. And again, on page 26, you have a fair amount of projects that you've got budgeted for the warmer weather, and you've got the bond payments. They're paying off the street bonds, which enabled you to do some projects in the past. Moving on to page 27, we enter the enterprise funds, and these are funds that are run like a business, where the costs of the goods or services provided are expected to be paid for by the customers using those, or to show any subsidy that you have from taxation. And so 2023 is a different year where you have got the approval of the voters to have a sales tax going into this fund and to the wastewater fund, which we'll see in a second. Page 27, the three highlighted advances are the small amounts that could probably be paid back right quick to the general fund out of the water fund. And total fund equity is about 6 million. Now here you want to look up to the top and see what makes up most of that equity, and it's your fixed assets. So in the top section where the assets are listed, you see $1.8 million in cash and some receivables, but you've got 13+ million in improvements minus accumulated depreciation of 8 million. So that's about 5 million of this total fund equity is in the ground or in capital assets, equipment. Page 28 shows you bill your utility customers every other month. And January wasn't a month where you had revenues billed. So you just see some changes for various user fees or corrections to bills or waivers of late fees perhaps that are in there. Page 29 starts the expenditures. And these are where all the salaries and the capital or distribution expenditures are, the upgrades, and then on page 31, the debt service for the notes that you have with the Colorado Water Conservation Board. I meant to go back to page 28. I mentioned that you don't have any billed revenues coming in January, but sales tax is appearing here now, and you see the budget was 487,500. And none of that has been received yet because the state will collect the December sales taxes, but it starts in January. So they'll collect the January sales taxes in February. The vendors have to remit them by the 20th of February. And then the state keeps their portions, and whatever other taxing districts get some of it and sends the city its portion by the 10th of the next month. So you'll first start seeing some sales taxes showing up on these reports in March when we get the first bit from January of this year. It'll be the same in the wastewater fund. Speaking of which, if you go to page 32, here's the wastewater fund. And again, at the top, you see some cash and receivables, but then you've got 19.8 million of improvements other than buildings minus the 6 million. So about 13 million in capital assets. But when you look down at the bottom, your total fund equity is nowhere near 13 million. It's 7.1 because of all those advances they're owed to the other funds. So those minor ones at the top, we're hoping to knock off fast down to the $160, but then determining how to pay back the 379,000 and the 2.24 million. That's the biggie one. That's the one you want to put a star by, page 32. Then on page 34, again, same situation with the sales taxes don't reflect yet, although you will get January sales taxes that show up in March. And then your regular user revenues will build next month. Well, February, next month's statements. The operational expenditures are about the same story as the water side, but even fewer of these have been paid so far because of many more of them being debt service that just aren't due yet. Your debt service payments on the bottom of page 36 and your capital projects, second from the bottom section on page 36, haven't started yet. And your principal and interest payments are due twice a year. So when those months roll around that they're due, then you'll see half those line items being charged. Page 38 is the parking enterprise fund, and it ended last year with about $349,000. And so you look at page 39, you see another roughly 25,000 going in there for fines for parking fees. Sorry, parking fees for January, and just a little bit of engineering and design costs in January to have your net revenue be in a positive amount for January. This pension fund, after the audit sum, will be gone. It won't be on these reports anymore because the last payment to the last pensioner was made in 2022. So we'll zero that out during this next month and look at the audit and then take it out of the reports. Be happy to answer any questions you have about anything I covered or anything else that's in here.
Council, any questions? Well, hearing none, Lorraine, thank you. It always is a wealth of information.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we will look at resolutions, only one tonight. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to resolution number 3, series 2023, a resolution repealing resolution number 7, series 2020, to end the declared local emergency related to COVID-19 coronavirus and to terminate all emergency powers related thereto.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
We'll second it.
Jeremy, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
We have next up, city attorney, anything tonight, or we gonna wait for executive session stuff?
Hi, Mayor and Council. I will see you in executive session.
Okay, all right. City administrator, Andy, no request for action, nothing else to share tonight?
No.
Okay, all right, and then we have, assistant city administrator, Jonathan. You do, have one request for action tonight.
Yes, sir. In work session, it was suggested that we modify the language just to reflect that there would be no city match required for the grant application.
Thank you, and, could I have a motion to that effect?
Yes, sir, I'll just make a motion to approve an application of the Colorado Department of Local Affairs DOLA Infrastructure Invest in Jobs Act local match grant program, LOMA, for $480,000 to provide matching funds for an application by the city to the Federal Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Raise Program, planning grant program in the amount of $2,410,000
No,
with, no, I would say it, no liability to the city,
Yeah, no match for
No match.
city funds.
no match to city funds.
That was mouthful. Thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Scott, thank you. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
yes.
Jim Clark.
Okay, Chief, no request for action tonight. Anything further you want to share?
It's time, Mayor.
Okay, well, thank you. Public Works, John, as was the last case, very thorough report. Thank you. And does anybody have any questions for either the chief or John tonight? Okay. Hearing none, I would like to move on to our executive session. And I would make a motion that I move that the city council hold an executive session under CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses B, and parentheses E, to receive legal advice and to discuss matters that may be subject to negotiation concerning the potential acquisition of real property, requests for water leases and augmentation, and the Argo Mine redevelopment project status. I further move that this regular meeting adjourns when the executive session adjourns. And with that, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.